Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night. You know what I haven't done in a while? An OG A Song of Ice and Fire theory video, and those are my favorite, so let's get into it. In A Song of Ice and Fire, there are many themes, but one of my favorite themes is history repeats. If you're new here, you might not know how obsessed I am with this concept, but don't worry, I got you. I will also link below other videos where I have talked about history repeating in case that's something you're interested in. It's just like how time works in general. There are quotes about it in the real world and in the universe of A Song of Ice and Fire. Here's one of the quotes I love by George R.R. Martin. History is a wheel, for the nature of man is fundamentally unchanging. What has happened before will perforce happen again. One of the major differences I think between the show Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire is that the big war for Dawn will not take place in Winterfell, but will indeed take place in the Riverlands. I mean, which war was ever won with one battle in this story? But there will likely be a battle in Winterfell, but the war will be won in the Riverlands. In this video, I'm going to show you all of the evidence that exists that led me to believe the War for the Dawn takes place in the Riverlands. Firstly, let's go back into the past and I'll show you all of the important wars and how they were decided in the Riverlands, and even just some major events. So let's start with the coming of the Andals. One of the most legendary battles between the Andals and the First Men, who had teamed up with the Children of the Forest, was the Battle of High Heart. The great hill called High Heart was especially holy to the First Men, as it had been to the Children of the Forest before them. Crowned by a grove of giant weirwoods, ancient as any that had been seen in the Seven Kingdoms, High Heart was still the abode of the children and their greenseers. When the Andal king, Eric the Kinslayer, surrounded the hill, the children emerged to defend it, calling down clouds of ravens and armies of wolves, or so the legend tells us. Yet neither tooth nor talon was a match for the steel axes of the Andals, who slaughtered the greenseers, the beast, and the First Men alike, and raised beside the High Heart a hill of corpses half again as high. The Children of the Forest and the First Men were obliterated by the Andals in the Riverlands, changing the landscape of Westeros forever, and moving forward, we have Aegon's conquest. On the banks of the God's Eye, King Arryn the Black had just finished construction on his massive castle, Harrenhal. But Aegon was in the midst of his conquest, and Aegon wanted Arryn to bend the knee. They met at Harrenhal, and the words exchanged are still remembered to this day. "Yield now," Aegon began, "and you may remain as the Lord of the Iron Islands. Yield now, and your sons will live to rule after you. I have 8,000 men outside your walls." "What is outside my walls is of no concern to me," said Arryn. "Those walls are strong and thick, but not so high as to keep out dragons." "Dragons fly," Aegon replied. "I built in stone," said Arryn. "Stone does not burn." To which Aegon said, "When the sun sets, your line shall end." In case you were wondering, Aegon kept his word. Aegon and his dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, obliterated House Hoare and turned Harrenhal into flaming candles. But that's not all. Next in the timeline is the Dance of Dragons. The dragons danced all over Westeros, literally. But everyone can agree, the Dance of Dragons was decided again at Harrenhal, above the God's Eye, when Daemon Targaryen leapt off his dragon and put Dark Sister through the skull and eye of Aemon Targaryen, killing both men and their dragons, Caraxes and Vhagar. But that's not all. The first Blacfyre Rebellion was also decided in the Riverlands at Redgrass Field. The rebellion ended at the Redgrass Field, nigh on a year later. Some have written of the boldness of the men who fought with Daemon, and others of their treason. But for all their valor in the field and their enmity against Daeron, theirs was a lost cause. Daemon and his eldest sons, Aegon and Aemon, were brought down beneath the withering fall of arrows sent by Brynden Rivers and his private guards, the Ravensheath. So, that's the dance, Aegon's conquest, the coming of the Andals, but we're not done. We're just getting warmed up. We also have 3 main events that immediately predate our story. The 3 main events that have shaped the layout of A Song of Ice and Fire all take place in the Riverlands. Those 3 events are the tourney at Harrenhal, where Rhaegar crowned Lyanna Queen of Love and Beauty. The second event, takes place only leagues from Harrenhal, the disappearance of Lyanna Stark. Here's the exact quote. Not 10 leagues from Harrenhal, Rhaegar fell upon Lyanna Stark of Winterfell, and carried her off, lighting a fire that would consume his house and kin and all those he loved, and half the realm besides. The third event is Robert's Rebellion, which led to the death of Rhaegar Targaryen by Robert Baratheon's Warhammer. Those events are the history our story is built upon. But that's not all. We also have the War of Five Kings. The War of Five Kings starts and ends in the Riverlands. You could say the war starts when Cat takes Tyrion at the inn in the Riverlands. Or you could say it starts when the Lannisters meet the Starks at the Green Fork or the Whispering Wood. No matter where you think it starts at, it starts in the Riverlands. The War of Five Kings ended for good in the Riverlands, at the Twins, with treachery, the Red Wedding. So the Riverlands makes kings rise and fall, literally. So why should the War for Dawn be any fucking different? But if the histories and patterns we already have don't convince you, don't worry, I'm not done yet. First, let me explain why logically it makes no sense for it to be at Winterfell. Winterfell is probably the prime location for such an event to take place, right? It's this legendary castle that was built after the Long Night by Brandon the Builder. He raised these walls as a stronghold for his family to defend the realm against the cold things that come in the night. With the hot springs, the crypts, the magical spell work that Brandon the Builder could have used to fortify its walls, if we believe the tales about Storm's End and the Wall and Brandon the Builder himself, then it's probably the perfect spot to fight the White Walkers in. But does George really write like that? Would this perfect defense be readily available and just sitting there like a cherry waiting to be popped? I don't think so. One thing George does really well is he writes realistically, even in a fantasy world. I think realistically, Winterfell is not going to cut it. And here's why. In season 8 of Game of Thrones, we had 100,000 people flock to Winterfell. This is just not realistic for many reasons. Even in the best of times, even in summer, this isn't realistic because one glaringly obvious thing everyone seems to be forgetting, it is winter. The winters in Westeros are grueling as fuck. But in the north, it's like some next level winter wonderland apocalypse type shit. For example, right now, the Boltons have Winterfell. A lot of the northern houses and the Freys are pent up in Winterfell, waiting to go to war with Stannis. And it's just messy as fuck. So Stannis and his army are eating horses and shit. It's snowing, really, really deep snows and snow drifts and blizzards and snowstorms. It's honestly unrealistic to think you could get armies of people and horses and wagons and weapons and food through these snowstorms. Even if someone came up with some risky plan as to how to do it, most of the people wouldn't want to because the odds of them dying and all of their armies dying and them losing everything are high as fuck. So unless the three dragons are gonna Uber everyone to Winterfell, which is ridiculous in itself, I don't think the Battle for Dawn takes place in Winterfell. They'd likely die of starvation before the White Walkers get a chance to whack them. The other glaringly obvious logistic is where everyone is demographically and how I think certain open threads will close. One open thread really intrigues me, and that is the missing fish, the Blackfish. So before anyone goes north to Winterfell, I feel like a debt needs to be paid. One of the biggest open threads in the Riverlands besides the Wolfpack is the Blackfish. The Blackfish escaped the siege and fall of Riverrun to the Lannisters. The Blackfish is indeed a legendary warrior, brilliant military commander, and his family's home has just fallen. Before the Red Wedding, Robb named the Blackfish the Warden of the Southern Marches and his queen's personal protector. So, of course, the Blackfish could indeed try to rescue Queen Jean. However, I think the Blackfish has a much better plan. Before the Blackfish joined his great-nephew Robb Stark's army, the Blackfish lived in the Vale with his niece Lysa Arryn. The Blackfish was the commander of the Bloody Gate. He was a knight of the Vale for years and years. He is well respected in the Vale. He has a lot of friends in the Vale, or at least we can assume. In Game of Thrones Season 6, There is a scene where Sansa brings the Knights of the Vale to Winterfell to save Jon and win the North. However, this isn't a possible scenario because Jon Snow is dead. Stannis is actually the person fighting this war. Sansa is in the Vale, and the war for Winterfell is between Stannis and Roose Bolton. But what is very likely is that the Blackfish heads to the Vale, where he is very well respected, and he opposes Littlefinger outright. The people of the Vale do not like Littlefinger at all, but this exchange between Jaime and Brynden Tully leads me to believe this line of thinking will lead him right to Littlefinger's door. I will permit you to take the Black. Ned Stark's bastard is the Lord Commander on the wall. The Blackfish narrowed his eyes. Did your father arrange for that as well? Catelyn never trusted the boy, as I recall. No more than she ever trusted Theon Greyjoy. It would seem she was right about them both. No, sir, I think not. I'll die warm, if you please, with a sword in hand running red with lion blood. The Blackfish thinks that because Jon Snow has risen so high in the Night's Watch, that Tywin must have arranged that, and Jon Snow is no more than a treacherous bastard. So what if he applies that same logic to Lord Baelish? The Blackfish is a smart man. Not only has Littlefinger risen from poor penniless kid from like a small house that was fostered by his brother Houses Tully, Littlefinger has wound up Lord Paramount of the Trident, the Blackfish's brother's title. He also managed to become Lord Protector of the Vale, his niece's title. Why should Littlefinger be the man to look after the Blackfish's kin? The Blackfish is the uncle or great uncle of both Sansa Stark and Robert Arryn. I think the Blackfish out and out tries to get rid of Littlefinger and take control of Sansa and Sweet Robin. I think he would like make Sansa Lady Protector or some shit and take the Vale soldiers to the Riverlands to River Run. The Riverlands are depleted of resources and soldiers. Like the Freys really don't have that many people. Like the Freys have sent people to Roose Bolton and Winterfell. Aemon Frey and Jenna Lannister at River Run, they only have like a 200-man garrison. Like, the Blackfish could take that shit back in one day with the Knights of the Vale. But while all this is going on, they could be contacted by Jon post-resurrection, but the Riverlands will be back in the rightful place, and it will be because Sansa, Sweet Robin, and the Blackfish working together restored their family's power, which would mean it would be easier for the characters to come to the Riverlands instead of the North. The lore and the history, the repeating history, and the overall bad logistics of the Battle for Dawn being anywhere other than the Riverlands don't work for you. Don't worry, I got you. We have a quote from the story that I think is foreshadowing that this story is leading to a huge battle in the Riverlands. Dany's dream in A Storm of Swords is the biggest one. Right before Dany tricks the wise masters of Astapor and turns them to barbecue, she has a dream. That night she dreamt that she was Rhaegar, riding to the Trident, but she was mounted on a dragon, not a horse. When she saw the usurper's rebel hosts across the river, they were armored all in ice, but she bathed them in dragon fire, and they melted away like dew and turned the Trident into a torrent. In her dreams, she sees her enemy armored in ice. If that doesn't scream White Walkers, then I don't know what does. If history repeats, this War for the Dawn will be decided in the Riverlands. So what do you think? Where do you think the War for the Dawn takes place? I'm sold on the Riverlands. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone that supports me on Patreon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and join the Sweet Summer family. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.